Welcome, everybody, to the Celebrity Hour podcast. Have an excellent show today. Oh, my goodness. It's October 13th. It's Friday the 13th. We're going to get a little spooky, but keep it really cool today. I have an amazing, a legendary, an intercontinental champion of animation, film, and storyboard artistry. Coming in from Los Angeles, California, Will Mata. How are you?
Wow. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's good. No. Pause. Can I get a hell yeah? Oh my goodness. We're going to talk about your new short that you directed, Dora and the Fantastical Creatures. But first, like in The Sound of Music, we have to start at the very beginning. Where did it all begin for you, Will? In animation, in drawing, where was that spark? Where did it all begin for you?
I got to say, it started really early on for me. I was a kid who early on, my earliest memory to it was seeing another sort of fellow friend in elementary draw, and it was like draw an animated character. I think they probably drew like Donald Duck or something, and it was like watching magic happen. It was like, what? You put a certain amount of lines together and an image is created, and it was just like at that point I was just hooked. And this is like I never put the pencil down. I was always drawing. I was always that kid who was just observing and reacting and trying to express myself through it. It just became like my sort of security blanket through youth and growing up. And then as I got older, it just went from hobby to like, "Oh, I think I could do something with this," and sort of started to apply myself in school, and then had a fun internship like in college where I worked for Disney, and I got to kind of go in there. And at this point, by the way, I will say I thought it had it in the bag. There was a little bit of like, well, you go from like you're the only one who draws in the family, you're like probably the best artist in the classroom, and you're like going to college for it. I'm like, I must be pretty good by now. And I looked up and saw the artwork that the studio was creating. I was like, nope, back to the drawing board. Like it was a humbling experience, which was great because it kind of opened my eyes to this idea that it's not a local thing. Like, yes, I know the artist in LA, but like it's a global thing. And so there's hundreds and thousands of artists who pursue this career and apply themselves, and it's a lot of work. So I put my hat down, finished off school, and kept working, and kind of never stopped doing it. To this day, I feel like I'm still learning. I still feel like that kid who walked into the halls at a studio and went like, wow, there's super talented people. So I'm very fortunate to be around those people and hopefully take a little from that.
That's super cool. Do you remember some of your first like illustrations back in elementary school? Like what you tried to draw? Was it Donald Duck or was it?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of like Looney Tunes and like, Tom and Jerry. That kind of world was still kind of happening, and I was like watching a lot of that stuff. I know it had already had happened a while before me, but I remember like drawing like The Simpsons was probably like one of the first that I grabbed, because at that time like Bart was kind of the central figure in that show, and he just spoke to any kid in school, and like whether it was skateboarding or whether it was just being an edgy kid, like that was probably one of the earliest ones where I would draw. And like they were in t-shirts, they were everywhere, so it was a thing that like, yeah, I was drawing that all the time.
So Simpsons was a big influence.
Yeah, there was that. And I think like jumping around, even like uh Beavis and Butthead. Once I got a little older, I remember like watching that show and just going, this is wild, what is this? Not quite sure what to make of it, but it was interesting. I think influences came from all over the place. I don't think there was a very specific, but I think for me animation has always been one that it comes from like silent films. It comes from like your Chaplins and your silent like comedic actors, and all of that to say that like any of those earlier cartoons, Looney Tunes, and all, they were all about that. They're all physical. It was a little less about the dialogue, but it was just visual storytelling, and that's always been like a thing that pulls me in.
And so being a storyboard artist earlier in your career, and is it true that you started with Scooby-Doo?
I didn't start with that. Wasn't my first gig. That was like my first TV gig that I did,
Okay.
because I got started in features. So sort of when I worked with Disney, I was sort of accepted into their storyboarding program, which is kind of like the young storyboarders coming up, and we all were assigned mentors, and we kind of learned what storyboarding was, and we were just like a box of kittens, and then we got put on to different productions and started to kind of become artists. And so my start was at Disney Features, but that Scooby-Doo was a one-off I did like as a TV gig, like in between studios.
And with storyboarding, is that I'm curious about that because I came from the comic book world and there's lots of
Mhm.
storyboarding and paneling, but you as a storyboard artist get to like visualize what the movie looks like and work with the director. What's that like?
It's a lot of fun. I think the majority of the sort of, the joy I find from this job is the problem solving. And I think storyboarding is one that spins a lot of plates. As you know, even in just graphic novels, it's about what's the striking angle, what's going to sell the point, what's going to sell the emotion. You think about lighting, you think about, all these different aspects. Um, and that to me, like, is the biggest sort of nut to crack in the process. And it's a lot of fun, and to think that yes, I'm drawing in a box, but that box is representative of what's on the screen. It's kind of a wild thing to think about, And I've always been attracted to cinematography and photography, and graphic novels are great examples of like just choosing to put the camera in the right place. It's a really tricky thing to do.
No, that's really cool. And like I'm so impressed that like the first thing you did was Disney. You're like, wow, I started out at Disney. Where do I go from here?
Yeah, it's a fun place. It's a really fun place, and met a lot of really cool people. And till this day, I keep in touch with everyone. It's such a small community. We run into each other at different studios.
That's super cool. So coming aboard Dora and the Fantastical Creatures, coming to direct something, and you got to work with a lot of directors. When you walked in, on the set and you were working as the director, was it something like, okay, you went in, you're like, I need this, 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 and this, or was it something like, I'm coming in and like everything is on fire, I'm on fire?
Like I will say, I've had all those experiences you just described. I've been in productions that are just like put out fires. We're running out of time. What do we do? Desperation mode. And I've been on shows that are just smooth from beginning to end. And I think all those kind of help prepare me for this situation. And it's a short in itself, so it's going to have a compact schedule. So we were moving pretty fast. And I will say, like with experience, you kind of learn how to make choices and shoot from the hip and like feel good about them, because we don't have the leisure in this one to like really marinate on things. And I was lucky. I had a really good crew that did their part and made my job super easy. Like we just kind of all, I've never worked with them before, but we all kind of just jived, and we knew the target, and we knew that we wanted to make something special, and we just kind of all leaned forward. And it was one of the good ones for sure. It was one of the smooth from beginning to end.
Well, Dora is such an icon. Like she's been around, this character has, allowed for children to learn so much and entertain them for so much. Did you get full access to the archives, or did you know a lot about Dora coming into this?
Yeah, I make the joke that like Dora and I both got our start in animation around the same time. Like, so she's always kind of been there. Like, I was too old to watch the show growing up. I know people who've watched it. I know enough of it. It's so well known that I know the sort of DNA of the show. And it was fun to get a chance to work in that sandbox for me. It's one that's first time as well. Working on something that's a sort of a younger audience. It's a more focused lens that you tell a story through. But the things that were striking to me were, it's like you have a female hero, and she's a Latina, and I'm just like, already you're hitting a lot of things that I'm like, anytime you have an opportunity to put these characters out there, like, of course. And I'm like, yeah, Dora's been there. She's been around for so long, and I'm like, we get a chance to reintroduce her in a way like no one's ever seen her. Like we get to see her in CG for the first time. I was like, yeah, easy.
Yeah. It is cool. So, and I'm always fascinated by color palettes in animation, and with
Yeah.
Dora in this feature, the Fantastical Creatures, it's so beautiful to look at. Did you have any input or creative genius going into this amazing color palette? Because it's like when I was watching it, you're like, you have like the nighttime, but when it goes to the nighttime, it's like, oh my God, blacklight poster time, back in the 90s.
Right.
Like, I love it. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, early on we decided we wanted to kind of revolve this story around, Dora's story around something we hadn't seen before, and we zeroed in on alebrijes, which is Mexican folk art, and already just you take that sort of folk art off the shelf, it's already beautiful and amazing to stare at, and so we wanted to take that and create a world for Dora to come into, but try to be authentic about it. So we looked into it and tried to do as much research as we can and be respectful to that art form. And we found things like, a lot of the figures are made by a specific tree, a copal tree. They're hand carved. A lot of it is handmade. It's all hand painted, and that charm we wanted to sort of that became kind of our rules for this world building, where we used the patterns, similar color. Everything feels like it's handmade. Even if you notice the animation is kind of on fours, so the creatures in here move like they would sort of be made of wood and come to life. So they're not in the same sort of frame rate that Dora is in. So all these choices were to sort of like, just represent the art, the folk art, the Mexican folk art, and keep it authentic. So we definitely leaned into all that for creating the world.
Oh, that's amazing. And then with your this the first time you've directed like a short, right?
Yeah.
So was there a moment in either pre-production or like actually animating or in post where you kind of had an outer body experience where you were like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. This is coming together.
Yeah, I think there was multiple moments for sure, like, this all was initially like a verbal pitch that the studio was into, and we went, and automatically I was like, oh, okay, we're making this. And with the schedule being so fast, we're able to see like progress so quickly. And it's kind of like I equate it to building a house. You get excited when you have your blueprint and you're like, this is gonna be amazing. And maybe you have some visual extrusions of like what it's gonna look like, and then you see the flat plane and like they're digging out things, and you start to see the framework, and that's very exciting. You're like, wow, this is amazing. Then the walls come up and you're like, okay, now we have to make real choices, like what kind of windows do we pick, and so it, I think at every sort of checkpoint there was moments of excitement where it was just like, oh my god, this is coming together. And once we started seeing like, rendered color, you're just like, wow, like this is wild, so it's very cool, very proud of it.
This is a beautiful analogy there. I never put together like the architecture and like building a house with animation, because you like the blueprints are like the storyboards and then
Yeah.
it all comes in. That's such a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, and I follow that one a lot because the truth of it is, if your foundation isn't right, like if you don't have a really clean core story, like a building, it's just not going to hold up no matter how much you put on it. And of course, you're always going to add things to it. So you have to start with a really strong base. And I think like we had that here. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew where we wanted to go. And that it helps tremendously because, again, there's the version of filmmaking where you're just like, why are the walls falling? And you're trying to, turn it into a house. But that wasn't the case, luckily.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So being director and in animation, sound is so important. Did you get to help with any of the Foley work or the ADR or even like the score, the music?
Yeah, all that stuff we kind of talk about, and we go through and look for things. And you know, if you watch the short, there are sort of, you can kind of break it down into almost like a three-act structure, before we enter this magical world and whatnot. And so we wanted to kind of we would talk through the story like just kind of emotional beats, like opening, it's got to be intrigue, it's action, adventure, we're traveling through this area and it's like it's more magical, it's more lyrical, it's, we land on this space and it's like, again, we once we're in the land of alebrijes, we kind of go back to our rules, which were like handmade feel. Like, so how do we do that with sound? Like, do when they move, is it more of a wood kind of wind chime sound that they make? Like, so we're all these sort of things we just apply to every facet of it, and sound was the same. So we'd go through and sort of spot emotional moments and go, we need something bright, we need something low, we need, and it's a lot of fun to do.
That's awesome. I've been hogging all the questions. Alex, what you got? What you got?
I just first want to say that like we were sitting down watching like the old Doras, and like
Hmm.
it was made in like 2000, and I first thought that I was like, oh, I'm way too old to watch that, but I was 12 whenever it first came out. And just the different, like how different like the graphics look to compared to what you've done, it's like amazing. It's like a completely different, it's a shift. Like in your short, like the things come alive, like everything comes alive, and it's so it's almost magical. And
Hmm.
so I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see it, and especially with this little one coming on the way, it's really cool that there's going to be something more that he can watch, and it's cool that your family.
Awesome. No, yeah, it's great to see, like you're pointing out something that was interesting for me taking on this project, which was that this is the first time we see her in 3D, and I think the show has a certain cadence and DNA, and it was very sort of, I think originally was designed to be like a computer game, and you would see a mouse come in and click, and it was very like kind of 2D video game scroller. Um, and I think going into a 3D world, like just speaking cinematically, it gave us a chance to kind of push things and like really allow Dora to, I feel like I always felt she can command the theater and she could have a full feature film. Like it'll, it's a little more sophisticated camera and a little more cinematic, but it still has, we still, wanted to maintain that DNA, that sort of interactive quality where she talks to the audience and it's,
Mm-hmm.
try to keep that pace, but introduce a little more sort of like, a little more fast moving, a little more different pace to the show.
Did you watch the live action one? Because there was a live action one, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Did
yeah. I'm
any of
familiar with it for sure.
Okay, but none of that kind of like inspired you, or did it, was it just like this is the time and this is what how everything is changing, and that's what kind of inspired you to do
Yeah, I
what
mean,
you did?
I mean, I think it's great. The live action was a great sort of example of like how, again, like this female lead can carry a whole feature film, a full story, and I think the inspiration is always like what she carries, which is like she's curious and she loves to explore. Those are two things that I hold very highly. Like I try to apply to my life all the time, and so a well-defined character like that is a fun one to play with.
Absolutely. And I love that she speaks Spanish. I love it. I'm like, man, I can really learn. I mean, I know Spanish, but it's really cool for people that don't. It's like they can sit there and watch it and learn.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the whole educational component of her world too, which again, it's an opportunity to kind of for exposure for those who don't know it, and also just familiarity for those who do know it, and you get to kind of see these figures on the screen.
Yeah, that's super cool. And you brought up a good point of Dora and the Fantastical Creatures being like in 3D now. As an animator and a storyboard artist and now a director, are you constantly looking for the next change in animation or where you can bring it to?
Yeah, I think that should always be a goal for anyone making these films because the truth is like, if you flash to where we're at now compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago, there's tons of animation now. Like we're almost oversaturated. There's like animation shows, movies, films, like they're everywhere. So now the trick like is how do we stand out? Like what do we do that's different, or how do we continue to push, and yes, the goal should always be to stand out and do something new and sort of enhance the genre. It's been evolving. It's gone from like, we've seen 2D that's stop motion, sand animation, paper cutout animation. Like they pushed that to the limit, and there's still tons of 2D stuff that's getting pushed, and now CG as well. It's like, what can we do with it? We can do anything. That's the beauty of animation, is you can go anywhere with it. Why would you not?
um, out of any of the work you've done, so I'm going to ask with this, from stuff from Scooby to Boss Baby, Lego Movie, Trolls World Tour, Sea Beasts, DC League of Super Pets, beat working on these films. Is there any sort of like artistry or cell or storyboard that you got to keep that you have framed that you're really, really proud of?
Oh, I'm terrible at this. I don't really revisit my stuff. I'm horrified by it.
What?
I,
Why? Because
I,
it's so good.
Right? I
I,
would say
I,
what you have right now, it's like amazing. I keep that up. I love it. Put it in a
Thank
dark
you.
room.
There might be a few boards I keep, but I'm more of a fan of the artists I get to work with. You know, like I think a lot of my memories come from like the directors or the other board artists or the peers that did things that kind of inspired me. I'm more of a fan of other people. For real, like my work has an expiration date. The minute I do it and I'm excited about it, like a week later, I'm like, I don't want to look at it anymore. I don't know why.
All right. So if that's the case, besides Simpsons and Matt Groening, what else inspires you? Like what animation is it? Is it like Ralph Bakshi, or is it what would you hang up in your house animation wise?
Oh, I mean, like I think there's for me, film, like there's animation and live action films. I think they kind of blend like the inspiration, and I mentioned some things like I'm a big fan of, old silent films. Like I'm a big fan of like, contemporary films. I'm always looking for anything that's going to inspire me, like to do visual storytelling. Like for me, like dialogue and sound are like fun things to add on. But you look at the genre of animation, and that's where it started, was like strong visual storytelling. I'm a big fan of, if I turn the volume down on something, I know what's going on. That's either because the camera's in the right place, the acting is being done correctly, and it's just like edited correct. Like those are the things that I lean towards. And I don't know. I mean, there's so many specifics I can give you, but like I think those are the things I pursue when I look at film, and those are the things that attract me.
Now, we've seen these episodes and how now, like the Super Mario that they turned into the film. Did you see that in Dora? Do you see a film in the big screens?
Well, if you say that 3 times, it'll happen.
Beetlejuice.
Right? Door in the
I think
film, door in the big screen, door on the big screen, door on the big screen.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I gotta go, guys. I gotta go make them know. Yeah, I think like, to what I was saying, like, when I took on this project, for me, it was kind of like just an opportunity to show studio that, like, yeah, this character can definitely command a film. And I think that's true. And I think it holds up. And, if Fernando's asking for that movie, we should make it.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's been out since 2000. Like she's been here since 2000, 23 years. Like,
Yeah.
why
Right.
not? And you're the perfect person.
Thank you.
I like that. All right, so now I have to ask a very topical, important, serious question to you, Will.
Yeah.
It being Friday the 13th, if you can insert Dora into any horror movie to make it a better adventure, what horror movie would you insert Dora to?
Can you imagine the trauma we would cause? But yeah, let's do it. Just off the top of my head, just thinking of the lines and the cadence of this show. Can you imagine if we put Dora in like The Sixth Sense, and she's going,
Wow.
"Do you see it? Do you see it?"
Yes. Hey, say it 3 times and it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll traumatize so many children. Or what if you put her in like Nightmare on Elm Street, and instead of
in her
swiping,
dreams, like the adventure.
Freddy, like, no swiping, Freddy, no swiping.
But that makes sense though, like when her coming into this fantasy world where Nightmare on Elm Street has this fantasy sleep world, that makes sense.
There you go.
And then The Sixth Sense, I just picture Dora and Haley Joel Osment.
Cold air coming out of their mouths.
Right? Oh, that's genius. I love that. Now we need to make like a kind of a PG-13, Nickelodeon Are You Afraid of the Dark Dora type of special.
That'd be great. Yes. A little Halloween special. I like that. I like this brainstorming that's going on.
See, the wheels are coming in. The wheels are turning for 2024 Halloween style. I like that.
I love it.
So I gotta ask, I always ask everybody this that I talk with. I know we talked a little bit about influences, but and I know you talked about silent film, like Buster Keaton and Chaplin and all that good stuff. But are there any particular scenes in any movie and live action animation, any particular scenes that have always stuck with you that help shape you creatively?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons, and I think they happen everywhere. I think for me, like influences come from film, yes, and a lot of times just life experience. Like if you pay attention, there's tons to sort of pull and make authentic characters from. But to give you some examples, like, some of the films that I'll watch that I'm a big fan of, like you could pick any Coen Brothers movie. You could pick like No Country for Old Men. There's a scene where Javier's asking this old man at a store to flip a coin and call it, and I mind you, this whole film has no soundtrack, which is an amazing thing to like go back and watch. There's no soundtrack in this film, so it's all about where do you pull how do you use sound design to build tension or to create a moment. And in this scene, he's asking him to call it, and I think he's eating like a bag of peanuts or something, and he crumbles that thing and he puts it down on the counter, and he lets go, and the thing starts to unfold, and the camera hangs there, just hangs there, and all you hear is that sound that foil makes, and it creates such tension. And I'm like, genius. Like it's so simple. It's like anybody else could have gone heavy handed and brought in strings and created and it would totally ruin that moment. Like there's something about that, like scenes like that I'll take that and go, that's powerful. Like where can we use something like that? You take like Tarantino films where you play with timelines or you do things like those are ways that like you ask, like, how do you make animated movies stand out? Like you borrow things and you learn from those things and you find ways to tell stories so they don't always have to be linear. We all know in the beginning, we all know the prologues, we all know all of that, but I'm always searching for ways to kind of switch things up, or you take a film like The Revenant, you watch that movie. I feel cold watching that movie. I feel the pain. Like I feel hungry. I feel like my ankle's broken and it's all done through just visual storytelling, acting, dialogue, where the camera is, all those things. It's like are my inspirations. It's like, how do I evoke these feelings while you're watching something? So that's kind of it.
That's super cool. If you had to get an animated cell or an animated character tattooed on yourself, which animated
I'll show you which one I got. Show you my back piece. That'd be awesome. I just got like Snow White and 7 Dwarfs on my back.
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool, right? Yeah, that's that's tricky. There's so many, like Tom and Jerry would be great. It would be a great throwback.
Was there like a certain one, like a certain frame, like you would want tattooed of Tom and Jerry?
There was, oh man, there's so many. Like that's such a tricky one to do.
Would you draw it?
No, I wouldn't draw it because then I wouldn't like it anymore.
He doesn't like to look at his stuff, which is so crazy.
I do. I'd like it for about a week, and I'd be like, "Can we cover this up?"
No.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, there's so many characters flashing in my mind of what I would put. I'm very undecisive on this question.
Well, we'll come back. We'll add it to the gram later. You'll get back to us.
Awesome.
I love that one. Do you have any last questions, Alex?
No, this was just really fun, and I'm glad we got to do it. And hopefully, part 2 will be in the near future.
Dora the Explorer explores No Country for Old Men.
Oh my gosh!
Now you're talking.
Yeah, see, there you go. That's good. Will, tell everybody where they can find Dora and the Fantastical Creatures and when.
Oh, yeah, of course. Head out to your theaters. Dora's out right now. She's playing in front of Paw Patrols. And get out to the theaters while you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. We really appreciate it. Alex, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Oh my gosh. Well, right now, the Fitness Connection ads just keep popping up and popping up. Every single time he opens his Facebook, he's like, oh, there you are. JCPenney's, still waiting for the Epic Waters. But Fitness Connection for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. It's been a pleasure. We hope to have you on the show again very soon. And
Likewise.
this
Awesome.
was
Thank you
great.
guys.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for listening. We'll be back next time.